When considering ancient cities and pyramids, one would probably think of the locations in North America last. Instead, the images that would come to the minds of most people would be of ancient Egypt or one of the pre-Columbian Mesoamerican civilizations. But in the heart of what is now the United States, there existed a great city that had perhaps 20,000 people at its peak. At the center of the city, a four-sided pyramid stood, not made of stone, but of earth. Archaeologists call this ancient city Cahokia. Cahokia is one of North America's most impressive and important archaeological sites, and has been designated as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Here, I'm flintknapping a Cahokia point, an arrowhead style associated with the people of Cahokia that was used for hunting and for warfare. The site of Cahokia is located in Collinsville, Illinois. The site covers an area of roughly 12 square kilometers, with 120 mounds on its premises. The largest of these mounds, the pyramidal Monk's Mound, has 2 levels and a base covering 5 hectares. To compare to other ancient pyramids, Monk's Mound is roughly 4/5 the area of the Pyramid of the Sun in Teotihuacan in Mexico. Monk's Mound is just larger than the Khufu Pyramid in Egypt. Cahokia is 5 times larger than the next biggest site in North America. At its peak, it sprawled to East St. Louis. Across the Mississippi River, it had a sister settlement in what is now St. Louis. Cahokia points are small to medium points with a flat cross-section, due to being made from flakes. These points have straight edges and can be serrated in some cases. The notches come in from the side and are parallel to the base. There's often a third notch extending up from the base. Some examples of Cahokia points have additional notches, often below the initial pair of notches. The length of these points ranges from 19 to 43 millimeters on average. Cahokia points are a style that is largely found in the central Illinois River Valley, in and near Cahokia, as well as the various outposts, farmsteads, and other sites where Cahokia had influence. Cahokia points are mostly made from heat-treated flakes of Burlington chert, which was the closest available source of stone for these people to make tools from. They were also made from other Illinois cherts, such as K-Woolen, Mill Creek, and Cobden. I chose to make this Cahokia point from heat-treated kaolin. While I was visiting Cahokia for a field school, I got to check out some excavations that were taking place here. One of the excavators showed us a broken Cahokia point he had found just minutes before. I instantly recognized the material as kaolin, which is the reason I decided to use this material for the point that I'm making. The city of Cahokia was an expression of Mississippian culture, which started to form in the Midwest around 1000 CE. These Native American peoples had a stratified society with social classes, grew maize for the majority of their diet, hunted with the bow and arrow, and lived in communities from a few houses to huge settlements like Cahokia. By 1050 CE, Cahokia went through a population Big Bang. Archaeologists think that this population boom at Cahokia peaked at around 15,000 people, but there may have been as many as 20,000. This sudden growth in the population seems to have largely been the result of migration from other areas. More so than with any other previous Native American society, Cahokia was a stratified society. Status was not just earned, but it was also something inherited through birth. The residential population of Cahokia was largely comprised of political and religious leaders, craft specialists, and their supporters. The leaders of Cahokia were responsible for organizing communal feasts and celebrations of religious and political events. They oversaw and legitimized religious ceremonies, priests, and artwork. This art gives us an idea of their religious and communal beliefs thanks to the extensive iconography depicting life renewal, fertility, warfare, and much more. At its heyday, Cahokia was the center of power in the Mississippian world. Cahokia spread its influence over the Mississippian world not only with political power, but also spread in a physical sense as well. There seems to have been a mission or colony established at Trempealeau, Wisconsin, with direct links to Cahokia. Archaeologists are discovering that this may have been only one of a dozen or such Cahokian colonies. Other Mississippian centers throughout eastern North America during this time were likely secondary centers of power to Cahokia. Cahokia couldn't survive with just the leaders and craft specialists who called it home. To support such a massive population, it needed food. Maize, which had been introduced to this region during the late woodland period, was the food that fueled Cahokia. The majority of this maize was grown by the people in the countryside who lived in small homesteads and hamlets. The buildings that housed the farmers of Cahokia were roughly 3.6 by 4.5 meters and consisted of upright supporting poles, wattle to form the walls, and thatched roofs. While maize formed the base of their diet, the people of Cahokia still ate better than these farmers. Looking at the faunal assemblage at Cahokia, the deer bones found here are from choice cuts of meat, while those at rural Mississippian sites represent more portions of the deer's body. Those people in power at Cahokia also had a greater proportion of meat to maize in their diet when compared to that of common people. Political and religious leaders at Cahokia also lived in better houses. Those houses that were home to these powerful people were T-shaped and larger than the smaller, rectangular structures of commoners. There were a number of different buildings and constructions at Cahokia besides dwellings. The largest of these were the earthen mounds and open plazas. The largest plaza, named the Grand Plaza, covered an area of 19 hectares. Large wooden posts were stood upright and served as markers. There were 4 rings of wooden posts at Cahokia, dubbed wood hedges, which seem to have been used as calendars. Wooden posts were also used to create palisade walls and ritual screens. There were smaller circular structures that were used as sweat lodges, and huge buildings that served to host council meetings. The leaders of Cahokia who led powerful and elaborate lives had intense and elaborate funerals as well. Mound 72 is an elongated, ridgetop mound at Cahokia that held a unique story. This mound, as well as others, served as a place for the elaborate burials of elites. As part of the burial in Mound 72, 53 individuals, mostly young women, were sacrificed in a single event to be buried with the elite individuals who had died. These sacrifices and the burial of the elites are thought to have been a public ceremony that tied in with Mississippian religious ideas. One of the elites in Mound 72 was buried atop a shell-bead blanket in the shape of a falcon. This man, atop the shell-bead blanket, was buried over top another individual, with the bodies of others surrounding him. Numerous other grave goods were interred with this burial as well. During Cahokia's peak, there was little violence in the way of warfare. The size and political influence of Cahokia was enough to deter attacks in this region. Violence still did exist in the form of ritual killings and public executions, however. Cahokia's decline brought an end to this lack of warfare. While there isn't evidence of attacks on Cahokia itself, by 1150 CE, the residents of Cahokia felt insecure enough to build palisades around the city. These palisade walls were reinforced with bastions at regular intervals for defending archers to fire onto attackers. Around this same date, the residential population of the city was decreasing, and the construction of mounds and plazas slowed. After the end of the 12th century, Mississippians in the region were forming into compact settlements with palisades of their own. Iconography depicting warfare and violence became more widespread in Mississippian artwork. In the 1200s, there are multiple sites that show evidence of being completely burned down as part of an attack, sites like Orendorf, Buckeye Bend, and Star Bridge. By 1350, Cahokia was almost completely abandoned. The people who had lived here moved on to form or join other settlements, but rarely left any trace that they had come from Cahokia.